Okay. Well, once again, everyone, welcome to our Clean Buildings Performance Standard, developing the EUIt webinar. My name is Jeff Rasmussen. I'm an Outreach and Education Program Manager here with the Clean Buildings team. And along with me is Dylan Ackerman, our Compliance Specialist. And together we'll take you through this presentation on developing the EUIt, which is one of the important steps of Clean Building Performance Standard compliance. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. Just as an introduction to folks, Dylan, if we can go to the next slide, please. We are part of the Department of Commerce, a very robust agency here in the state of Washington, serving many corners of our state, everything from housing and homelessness, small business assistance, community services, and then of course we are here in the energy division. Our agenda for today, as you'll see here shortly on the screen, we got a lot to cover. And some very specific examples or scenarios to walk through for you. And then, like I said earlier, we will have time for Q&A as well. But before we jump into it, I do want to take a step back. Maybe this is a refresher for some, new information for others, and just really kind of quickly explained how we got here. So buildings have a profound impact on the environment. The building sector is the state's largest carbon polluter behind transportation. So even though these graphs are from 2015 data, the comparisons are still relevant even today, where building and carbon emissions are second as far as the most amount in the state behind transportation. And with the growth of our state, I believe that growth in carbon emissions continues to get larger, even with the significant changes or improvements that we made over the years to help bring that down. Ultimately, this is in an effort to reach our greenhouse gas goals in the state, our greenhouse gas reduction goals within the state by 2030, 2040, and 2050. So all that led us to our Clean Buildings Performance Standard, which is based on ASHRAE Standard 100. It was covered, or back up here. ASHRAE Standard 100 covers energy efficiency in public buildings, and you can see the reference here on your screen. And then Commerce developed the amendments to Standard 100 to conform with the Clean Buildings legislation, which was House Bill 1257 that passed the 2019 legislation. These amendments can be found in WAC 19450. Now, originally, the standard defined covered buildings as Tier 1 buildings, which are buildings over 50,000 square feet. Later on, the law expanded to include Tier 2 buildings, which are buildings between 20,000 and 50,000 square feet, as well as multifamily buildings over 20,000 square feet. And during this time, we were charged with rulemaking, notifying building owners, administering incentives, and supporting mandatory compliance. And so, we'll touch on some of this in today's presentation, but to see a full scope of this, I certainly invite you to look at our Clean Buildings 101 presentation that's available on our website. As today's focus is within the standard in section 7, which you can see here on your screen. So this is a graphic of the Washington State Clean Building Performance Standard. We're going to focus in on section 7, which is building EUIt target setting. And if you haven't already gotten a copy of the building performance standard, you can either wait till we get the information sent out, scan that QR code, or I'll put a link here in the chat here in just a moment where you can request a copy of that. So, all right, and I believe we are, yeah, Dylan, looks like you are up here.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'll be reviewing covered buildings, defining some key terms slash acronyms, and I'll be diving into the steps for achieving compliance, specifically today, developing an energy use intensity target. First off, as Jeff introduced, a Tier 1 covered building is a building where the sum of non-residential, hotel, motel, and dormitory floor areas exceeds 50,000 gross square feet, excluding the parking garage area. This also includes building complexes in the bottom left here, which are a group of buildings interconnected by conditioned spaces on contiguous property. Up here, we've got the actual definition of a Tier 2 covered building. To summarize, Tier 2 buildings are buildings that are greater than 20,000 to 20,000 up to 50,000 square feet, excluding parking garage. And this also includes all multifamily buildings greater than 20,000 square feet. Compliance schedule here. Tier 1 covered buildings have the following compliance schedule based on the cohort, which is based on their size. So buildings that are more than 220,000 gross square feet have a compliance deadline of June 1st, 2026. Buildings that are between 90,000 and 220,000 square feet have a deadline of 2027. And then for 50,000 to 90,000 square feet, a deadline of June 1st of 2028. Next, Tier 2 buildings all Tier 2 buildings have a compliance deadline of July 1st, 2027. As a quick comparison of the attributes between Tier 1 and Tier 2, you'll notice the differences in size of the buildings. Tier 2 buildings all multifamily buildings will be Tier 2. The requirements are just a little bit different as well. While Tier 1 buildings have to benchmark, create an energy management plan and an operations and maintenance program, as well as comply with a performance metric. Tier 2 buildings they need to set a performance metric, but they do not need to meet it at this time. Finally, the compliance dates are different. Jumping into definitions here a little bit, these are a couple terms that I'll be using during the following discussion, and I want to make sure we're all clear on exactly what they mean. So starting with benchmarking, for the Clean Buildings Performance Standard, we require at least 12 months of total building energy use, which will be used to create an energy use intensity value. The energy use intensity is a metric that measures relative building energy use. This is calculated in Energy Star Portfolio Manager it'll be energy use per square foot per year. Finally, the energy use intensity target, EUIt, is the target for net energy use intensity of a covered building. And this target is established for Washington based on multiple factors, including building activity, climate zone, weekly operating hours, and if the building is recently built. This value can be calculated using Commerce's Guidance Doc 18 and is also incorporated into Form B of the Clean Buildings portal. How are the energy use intensity targets developed? To develop the EUI targets in the CBPS, Commerce hired a consultant during the rulemaking process to create these targets. The energy use intensity targets in the standard are not following the targets determined by ASHRAE or Energy Star Portfolio Manager. They are based on mean building activity energy use data from both regional and national sources, such as CBEX, CBSA, or the Seattle Benchmarking Program. Overall, Commerce developed roughly 100 specific building activity types for the standard. Taking a step back here for the compliance paths, for a Tier 1 building, there are three possible compliance pathways. First, there is applying for an exemption certificate. As I'll cover, exempt buildings do not have to go through the rest of the steps. They will apply for an exemption. All other buildings must go through the step, and they will either be pursuing the investment criteria or the meeting energy use intensity target path. Since today's topic is developing an energy use intensity target, I also wanted to mention that there are some buildings that will not be able to develop a target due to having non-target space or other factors. Buildings that do not have an energy use intensity target will be required to comply via the investment criteria pathway. Also of note, as you can see in this little call out, for tier 1 buildings, the determination of an EUIt is done by the qualified person. Tier 2 compliance is a little bit shorter here, but it's the same basic steps. Buildings can either achieve reporting compliance or apply for an exemption certificate. And there are two steps here, which are benchmarking and determining the target EUI, as well as developing and implementing that O&M and EMP. The determination of the target EUI can be done by the qualified energy manager. All right, into the main topic for today, which is developing the energy use intensity targets. First step in developing the targets is measuring the gross floor area of your building. Gross floor area shall be measured in accordance with the standard, and this will include all spaces within the thermal envelope of the building, including supporting function spaces. And of note, in our table 7-4, we have for every building activity, it will have a specific description of exactly what the gross floor area for that space should be including. Of note, this does not include outside bays, docks, or parking areas. Building activity types. Building activity types can be found in the guidance document library, document 18, which has building activity types, definitions, targets, and shift normalization. And in our example here, we can see the process, which if you're a building owner, you'll be going through and looking through these activity types to find the activity that most closely matches the actual use of your building. You will also note that these green columns here have the energy use intensity target for the buildings based on the climate zone. And then there are a couple factors that will adjust that target, including which climate zone it's in, as well as the weekly hours that the building operates, which are shown in these orange columns here. Next step is determining the compliance level for your building. In general, tier 1 covered buildings should comply at the individual building level unless they have either meters that are shared with other buildings and would be then considered connected buildings, or if buildings are a college/university, a K through 12 school, hospitals, or a prison building, their activity types can actually comply at the campus level. Short description, this diagram right here has the connected buildings energy use intensity, but as you will see, these are buildings that are not physically connected, but they do have the same energy meters. So in lieu of complying via their individual building energy use intensity target, they will have a target for all 3 buildings. And as you can see here, this is a process per section 7.2.3, which creates a weighted average target for the buildings to meet. Next up, a campus level energy use intensity target. As I mentioned, this is restricted to specific activity types. But the understanding here with campuses are we understand that these building activity types may consist of multiple buildings which serve different portions of an overarching campus function. So in this example diagram, you could have build, say this was a college or university, you could have some buildings that are a dorm that are operating 24/7. You could have a lunchroom area. This may include classrooms or any other portions. And for a campus, you can combine those together and create and comply at the campus level. Next up, for buildings that have multiple activities, as described in section 7.2.3, buildings with multiple activity types will develop their EUIt by creating an area-weighted aggregate accounting for different operating hours and respective shift normalization factors. This is calculated using the formula below. However, this is also another great opportunity for me to remind folks that Commerce has developed an energy use intensity target calculator, that guidance document 19. And for compliance reporting, Form B in the Clean Buildings portal calculates an EUIt automatically. For buildings with multiple activities, there are a couple exceptions to the section 7.2.3 guidance. First exception is a space with more than 75% of the GFA consisting of a single activity is allowed to may report the building as single use. Spaces that have less than 10% of the total GFA can combine the activity floor area with a similar activity as determined by the qualified person. 3, if the building is submetered, non-target spaces less than 10% of the building's GFA can be excluded from EUI and EUIt creation. An example of this one might be if a building has a data center that makes up 5% of the building's total GFA, they may be able to submeter and remove that from the EUI and EUIt calculations. Fourth, if submetered, non-target spaces that make up less than 50% of the building GFA can be excluded from EUI and EUIt creation. With that said, these spaces must still comply through the investment criteria pathway if they are non-target. Next up is shift normalization factors. Normalization is done based on the weekly hours of operation. So the 3 categories that we'll use as shown in this table 7-3 are 50 or less hours per week, 51 to 167 hours per week, or 168, which represents 24/7 activity in the building. These shift normalization factors will vary based on the building activity type, and they apply to the energy use intensity target calculation as a factor. So for example, if we were looking at activity type 33, which is other recreation, if that building is used less than 50 hours a week, it may have a shift normalization factor of 0.6. You will also note that table 7.3 here has some footnotes. Right now, all of these notes say 4 on them. I'll cover a little bit. There is additional guidance for some buildings. At the bottom of table 7-3 are a bunch of footnotes that have specific guidance depending on the building activity type in some cases. But a couple of the ones that I'll highlight, I'm not going to go through all of these since there's quite a few, but instructions are don't count the hours when property is occupied by maintenance, security, cleaning crews, or other support personnel in some cases there. Or using another example, activity type 46, which is a restaurant. Activity type 46 has a note, which is number 4, saying that the weekly hours for that activity type are the hours that the majority of the building is open to serve the public. For a restaurant, that would be the hours that the restaurant is open and serving customers. Next slide here, there are a couple other notes. Just to highlight another one is some buildings, say for example, aquariums, museums, and zoos, have unique energy use, which is may often need to run additional hours. And specific guidance for them are that they, if they are required to operate building systems additional hours for the building contents, they may use those weekly hours in their creation of the targets. Next factor in the energy use intensity target creation is climate zone. There are 4 climate zones in the state: 4C, 5B, 5C, and 6B. But our targets were developed only using 2, 4C and 5B, which is in alignment with the energy code, as there are relatively few commercial buildings in 5C and 6B. Finally, the final factor in EUIt creation is more recently built buildings. If buildings have a construction and application permit date of July 1st, 2016 or later, that building is held to the more recently built building standard, which means they'll have an EUIt that is 15% less than the published targets in table 7-2A. All right, those were quite a few factors that are included. Thankfully, I have good news. This process does not need to be done manually. I'll show a short example here of our Form B, which includes, especially if you look at the bottom, it'll include the activity type, weekly hours. It'll do the shift normalization factor for you. And really all you'll need to do is input a couple details in order to create that target for your space. For today's demonstration, I wanted to use a couple examples of developing that EUIt. For this first example, we have a grocery store with a square footage of 100,000 square feet, weekly hours of 120. The building's activity type, as mentioned, is grocery store, and this building is located in Clark County. This matters for the climate zone. And finally, for this example, we have a recently built building built in 2020. I think this is working here. Perfect. If you're looking in, I have a copy of a test portal. So we have a example building, and the process for going through this would be for this grocery store. I will search for my activity type, which in this case is a supermarket. I'll select it and over here, and then you'll note that I add it to my list down below. Once I have this list below, I'm merely taking those details that I showed you on the previous slide. So grocery store has 120 weekly hours. So I select 51 to 167. This is a single-use building of 100,000 square feet. So I'll put in 100,000 for the GFA. And then it was constructed in 2020. So I will check this for recently built. And after I've done all of that, you will see that it takes all of these values and creates a space EUIt at the bottom, which in this case, we created a target of 146.1 for the building. A second example, I made the second one a little bit harder. This is what it should look like. I made my second example a little bit harder, so you might need to take notes or pay attention. But this is a mixed use building, and it has same GFA of 100,000 square feet. However, it has 3 different use types as well as different weekly hours for the various spaces. For the purposes of today's example, this building is also located in Clark County and was built in 1990. What we can do here, I'll just do this quickly as another example. You will add your various activities, daycare, and third one was office. This was an admin/professional office. I will add those 3 activity types. I'll select their respective weekly hours. So the grocery store had weekly hours of 120. The, oh, that wrong. Daycare had hours of 70 weekly hours. Supermarket was open 120 weekly hours. And then this office space, has less than 50 weekly hours. I would then put in their respective activity gross floor areas, which would be 50,000 for the supermarket, 30,000 for the daycare, and 20,000 for the office. It will take all 3 of these and produce a space energy use intensity target, a weighted average space EUIt, which then produces a target for the entire building of 115. As you'll review, sometimes buildings are a little bit more complicated, and obviously this is a very easy diagram example, but those are the essential steps involved in creating a target. This is that same one below. So that is a little bit, I don't know if people had specific other examples, and I might, if we have time for questions, I might do an example of another one if people want to contribute. But that is that process in the portal, and we do try to make it pretty seamless so that people can create their targets quickly and understand what their buildings should be trying to meet in terms of energy use intensity. Next up here, I'll pass it back to Jeff for support resources and the CBPS website.
All right, thanks, Dylan. So, all right, if you've been with us before, you know that we like to highlight the support resources and our website. We know that this is can, or at least can be, a very complex and technical process. So we are here to help. Right. One of the, or some of the ways that we offer our no-cost support, of course, if we go to the next screen, if you don't mind, Dylan, just a quick snip of our website that has our email address, buildings@commerce.wa.gov, as well as our customer support forum. This is the easiest way to connect with our buildings team, whether it's like such as Dylan and I on the programming outreach team, or Judy, Donnie, James, Luke on the technical team, or even our incentives team. This is the best way to reach out to us, either through the email or the customer support ticket. We offer monthly office hours which is on the fourth Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. So our next one is coming up next Tuesday on March 25th. And this is just an opportunity to come as an open forum for an hour, connect with our team, ask your questions, walk through specific scenarios or whatever the case may be. And we usually have multiple folks from the different aspects of the performance standards in the room to be able to answer questions or help support you there. There's also the utility accelerator programs, the Smart Building Center through Building Potential. They have a no-cost help desk, and then Energy Start Portfolio Manager also has a variety of customer support and trainings. Beyond that, we do a lot of outreach, education, and additional customer support. Of course, this training right here is a great example of the outreach and education that we do, and mention a lot of the support that we offer. And you'll see in the next slides here as we transition over some of the trainings that we've had in the past. And I know Dylan mentioned connected buildings and campus level buildings. We hosted a training on that in February 20th. Dylan, if we can switch to the next, thank you. And so when I send this out to everyone, there'll be links in there for all these trainings that you're welcome to have access to. And I know Robert put a link in the chat there to our website that has all of our trainings, recordings, and other presentation materials that we offer. And then coming up in Q2, this is just freshly confirmed. We are going to continue our benchmarking training in April, specifically for multifamily buildings. And then later on, excuse me, go a little more specific into Tier 2 compliance. We do a quarterly Clean Buildings 101 for those that are new to this process or would like a little refresher. And then in May, we'll get a little more technical with our decarbonization of the district energy systems. And we do have numerous trainings tentatively scheduled in June, just working to confirm the dates on those. And so once we have those confirmed, we'll get those added. But hopefully you'd be able to join us for any one of these that you see fit. And like I said, the information will go out with the slide deck after this meeting. And with that, I think we can open it up to questions. And so again, if you've got questions, I know we've had a lot come in through the Q&A, which has been great. And we've got an amazing team that's been able to answer a lot of that. So thank you, team. If you would like to bring your question live, just raise your virtual hand here and I'll bring you in and connect with our Clean Buildings team. So, and while that's coming up, I do see one in there asking if notices have been sent to building owners for both Tier 1 and Tier 2. Now, Judy, you just answered that. Thank you. Just touch on that real quick. Tier 1 notices went out in 2021. Tier 2 notices are scheduled to go out in June of this year, June 2025. So let's see. Rex, I see your hand up. Good morning. And Rex, it looks like you're still on mute.
Can you hear me
There you
now?
go. There you go.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So I know I'm hopefully not skipping ahead too far, but when I go through all this in the portal, if our Form C, as we pull that energy down from Energy Star, if that number is less than the EUIt that we calculate in Form B, does that mean we should be able to go via the compliance path and not the investment path? Is that how this whole thing works?
Yes, if
Okay.
your energy use intensity of the building as calculated in Form C is less than the target, then you can comply via the meeting EUIt compliance path.
Perfect. Starting to make sense. Thanks, guys. It's very helpful.
You got it. Thanks, Rex.
Another question I wanted to address in the comments quick. I think this was asked by Don and answered by my helpful colleague. Don mentioned that there are some bugs in the current Excel-based EUIt calculator. We are in the process of updating and completing a revised version of that calculator right now.
Perfect. Thanks, Dylan. So I do see Don's hand up here, so I want to get to Don here just in a second, but want to tee one up for you, Dylan, to possibly bring forward here in a second. From Andrew asking if we could do a quick example at the end showing how to determine the EUIt for a campus level property or connected buildings property.
Yes, Andrew. Currently, the functionality for compliance of grouped buildings is not yet available in the portal. However, and Judy, please correct me if this would look substantially different, but I could show an example of how you might go about setting up that connected building group in the Form B. Judy, any thoughts on that?
Could you do the group right now? It's not launched yet.
I couldn't do the compliance application, but I think I could still do the like calculation. Like if you had say two connected buildings that were like 50,000 square foot office building and a 60,000 square foot office building, you could add two activity types in that Form B currently.
So the way it's going to work is that each individual building will have its own Form B, and then the grouped buildings will aggregate in the group application, a aggregate Form B for all the buildings within the group. It's still under development, so it's hard to talk about because we haven't worked all the details out yet, but soon, hopefully it'll be available for people to at least look at. Yeah, Dylan, I don't think you could, I don't know if you could do a live.
That's all right. We
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
wait for that functionality.
I was gonna say
Right.
that might be one to come back to, and
Yes, definitely.
so okay, perfect. So Don, I noticed your hand went down. If you still have a question, feel free to pop that back up or add the question to the Q&A. I'm happy to come back to you. So let's see, do workshops such as fleet mechanic areas fall under the warehouse non-refrigerated buildings activity type?
Very good question. You would need to go into the activity type definitions table. I think there may be a mechanic or auto shop activity type. So you may have to go into that and find it for yourself.
Cool. Excellent. Thanks, Dylan. And then you mentioned the EUIt calculator tool being updated. We're assuming that it'll be the same link, so they can just use that same link.
Yes, it will be.
Yeah. We'll yeah, we'll definitely try to make sure that's the same link, and if not, get that to everyone out, or get that out to everyone. Let's see. All right, Don, before I lose you again here, I'm going to bring you in. Excellent. There you go, Don. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that the link that Judy shared in the chat was the same calculator that I'm utilizing. And it looks like it's obviously in an Excel spreadsheet here, but line 18 and 20, which is where you enter your GFA. As I said in the chat, no matter the size of your building, I've got two different buildings, way different sizes. It ends up coming up with the same space
Oh.
EUIt calculations at the
Oh,
end. And I'm assuming that the Washington State Department of Commerce website, the one that you were sharing online, has a different calculation.
Don, that is a very good question, and I can actually take that. The reason that you're seeing that is because their energy use intensity targets will actually be the same if they're the same activity use and space.
Interesting.
And that is because I'm just backing up to a slide here. The energy use intensity for a building is calculated based on energy use per square foot per year. And so if you have a building with 50 units of energy per square foot per year, it doesn't matter how many square feet that building has, it'll still have the same intensity target.
Yeah,
And
because
if there's more questions on that, Don, I would also be happy to walk through examples together. But actually, Don, would you be willing to have your building use be used as an example of the portal calculations for that?
yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to share screen or
Okay.
do anything you like there as far as
If it
that goes.
if it works best for you, can you tell me the size
Sure.
of the building? Or sorry,
Yes,
the activity
it is.
types of the building?
You betcha. So the activity, this is a office building, professional administrative office building. Gross
right.
floor. Do you want the gross floor area?
Yes, please.
It is 1,735,079.
All right. If I didn't get that correct, my apologies.
1,735,079. That's perfect.
Okay.
Yes. And the fractional floor area is a 1.
Mhm.
The activity,
what
sorry.
are the weekly hours of the space?
It is within the 51 to 167.
All right.
The activity target is 63.
Okay. And then was this building wasn't permitted after 2016?
No, it was not.
Okay. Oh, this is going to give us an error, and I need to, so if the building details don't match up, in this case, it doesn't. Right now, the building list only shows it as being 100,000 square feet. So I'll need to go back and adjust this. 175,079. And this is actually a really good time to mention to folks that the owner reported gross floor area is the value that'll be used for calculation purposes. So there may be other values that show up in the portal, but this will be the spot where you can put in the actual size of your building. And the reason we do it like that is we understand the owners probably have a better idea of their building size than an employee in the city of Olympia would. All right. Oh, it's going to make me take this again. That was 1,735,079.
Correct.
All right. This time, since it is now 100% of the fractional floor area, it calculated a final target of 63 for the building.
And that's what I have.
Yep. And it would do the same thing no matter what the size would be. So
Really? Okay.
if this was say this was a 35,000 square foot building, this is doing it as a fraction of the space, but I'll go back real quick and
So my
Mhm.
space EUIt comes up as 53.6. That is, we're basically utilizing the 63. Is that not correct?
You're
Where it
not
says more
using
recently built buildings space EUIt comes up as 53.6
yes.
on,
Is
on your calculator.
Oh yes. Wait, sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, so click the box, Dylan, and it would make that, it should make that adjustment. Permitted on or after.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
right there.
Okay. Thank you, Judy.
So that's
My
the more
apologies.
recent.
There
one.
it is.
No, no,
Okay,
that's fine.
that's exactly what I have.
Okay. Yes. So you'll see
Hmm.
without that box being checked, you'll still have the same 63 target, no matter if the building's 35,000 square feet or 1.7 million, because
Okay.
of the calculation. But if you have a newer building, if it'll be 15% less there, and I'll have an adjusted target. Don, thank you for letting me use your building
Sure.
as an example. That was really helpful.
No, I appreciate that. The other building's, over 700,000 and it comes up exactly the same. So thank you for that.
All right. Perfect.
Jeff, were there other questions that came up in chat? Anything?
Definitely a handful of questions that came up, all of which have been answered by our team here. So again, thank you, team. I do see one that had just popped in, following up on a question about notification to building tenants. Looks like that was asked before, so I'm just trying to look through to see. Looks like we may have responded on that. I'm just trying to check here. I don't know if anyone answered that already.
I'm not seeing the answer either. So
Yeah, I
maybe
don't.
when they got kicked, it didn't really go through.
Okay. Let's see. So asked the question about notifications to building tenants. Did that get a response? So I guess if this person could offer a little more clarification of the specifics, but notifications, building owner notifications will go to the building owner. That's ultimately for Clean Building Performance Standard compliance. That's who's ultimately responsible for compliance. And so that's where the notifications, original notifications go. If we're notified that or asked to share that with the building's tenant or consultant or whatnot, certainly we look at that, but originally the notifications do go to the building owner, means that that's where the responsibility lies. So I hope that answers the question. If not, please feel free to raise a hand or offer additional clarification. Excellent, thank you for that. So tenants are questioning why they need to provide info to us as building owners. Does Commerce have info sheet we can provide them on clarifications why? Yes, we do. So I don't know if anyone wants to expand on that, and I can include the info sheet in the mail out or the email follow-up email, or if you want to email us directly at buildings@commerce.wa.gov, we can send that directly to you. So. All right, let's see. I don't see any other questions outstanding in the Q&A here. No hands up. So again, folks, really appreciate everyone being here. I know this was a good topic, very important topic for those that are working their way through the compliance or Clean Buildings Performance Standard compliance. We want to invite everyone to again join us on Tuesday, March 25th for our Clean Building Performance Standard office hours at 10 a.m. Again, this is an hour we set aside in addition to the other support that we have for connecting with folks, being able to answer your questions. If you've got a specific scenario like what Dylan walked through with Dawn, we're happy to do that as well. So Dylan or anyone else from the team, any last thoughts, closing words before we go ahead and close this out? All right, hearing none, seeing none. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you being here. And I hope that you can join us for our next session. Have a great day.